What if I told you that Zoro's greatest sacrifice was not just about pain, but about destiny? What if that moment on Thriller Bark was actually the moment Zoro stepped into a role far bigger than just being Luffy's right-hand man? Welcome to One Piece Uncovered. Today we are breaking down Zoro's sacrifice. Not just what happened, but what it really means. The hidden layers, the foreshadowing, and the terrifying possibility that this moment connects directly to the end of One Piece. Let's dive in. First, we need to go back to Thriller Bark. After Luffy defeats Gecko Moria, he is completely drained, physically and spiritually. Then, Bartholomew Kuma arrives. Not as a random villain, but as a test. Kuma offers a deal. Luffy's pain and exhaustion can be extracted, but someone else must take it. And Zoro steps forward. No hesitation, no speech, no drama. He tells Sanji to step aside. This is important. Sanji was ready to sacrifice himself too. But Zoro knocks him out. Why? Because Zoro understands something about hierarchy and burden. He believes the vice captain carries the captain's pain. That is his role. This was not about heroism. This was about responsibility. When Kuma extracts Luffy's pain, it forms a massive bubble of compressed suffering. Blood, trauma, fatigue, all of it. And Zoro steps into it. The next morning, Sanji finds Zoro standing in a pool of blood. He asks what happened. Zoro says, "Nothing." That single word became one of the most iconic moments in anime history. But here is the deeper layer. That moment defines the true difference between Luffy and Zoro. Luffy carries dreams. Zoro carries consequences. From the beginning of One Piece, Zoro's character has always been tied to sacrifice. In the Barity arc, he kneels before Mihawk after losing. He throws away pride to keep a promise to Quina and to Luffy. Later, during the fight with Mr. One in Alabasta, Zoro nearly dies, pushing himself beyond human limits to cut steel. In Enies Lobby, when Usopp leaves the crew, Zoro is the one who demands respect for Luffy's authority. He understands that a captain without order cannot become Pirate King. Zoro is not just muscle, he is structure. Now let's talk about something most fans overlook. Kuma did not need to give Zoro that option. He could have killed Luffy. Easily. But Kuma chose to test the crew, and he chose Zoro specifically. Why? Because Kuma is connected to the Revolutionary Army? He knows about Dragon. He understands what Luffy represents. Kuma was measuring the future Pirate King's foundation, and Zoro passed. But here is the theory. What if Zoro's sacrifice was also a moment of inherited will? In One Piece, willpower is everything. We see it with Gold D. Roger. We see it with Whitebeard. We see it with Oden. But what about the vice captains? Silvers Rayleigh was Roger's right hand. He stood beside him at Laugh Tale. Rayleigh was not just strong, he was unwavering. Zoro mirrors that role perfectly. During Thriller Bark, Zoro proves that if Luffy's dream requires blood, he will pay the price. Not Luffy. Him. And that leads to a bigger question. Is Zoro's path leading toward a final sacrifice because Oda does not write moments like this randomly? He plants seeds. Think about Wano. Zoro learns he carries the blade, Enma, once wielded by Kozuki Oden. Oden also sacrificed himself for his people. He endured boiling oil for an hour. Endurance, pain, standing tall no matter what. Zoro's Thriller Bark moment feels like a parallel. Oda loves parallels. Now here is the mid-video question you need to think about. What if Zoro's nothing happened was not just about hiding pain from Sanji? What if it was about protecting Luffy's image? Because if the crew saw how broken Luffy was, doubt could grow. Zoro removed that possibility. He protected the captain's legend, and legends matter in the world of One Piece. Reputation shapes reality. After Thriller Bark, the crew's faith in Luffy never wavers again. Even in Sabaody, when they are crushed by the pacifistas, Zoro never questions Luffy's dream. Now let's go even deeper. There is a pattern in One Piece. Every major Pirate King candidate has a loyal right hand who would die without hesitation. Roger had Rayleigh, Whitebeard had Marco, even Rocks likely had someone. Luffy has Zoro. But Zoro is different. He has his own kingly ambition. He wants to become the world's greatest swordsman. That means one day he must surpass Dracule Mihawk. And here is the twist. To become the greatest swordsman, Zoro cannot die early. But he can lose everything else. His eye, his body, his comfort, his peace. Oda already showed us that Zoro will destroy himself if it means Luffy moves forward. During Wano, after blocking the combined attack of Kaido and Big Mom, Zoro breaks nearly every bone in his body. Yet he still stands. This is not normal durability. This is narrative setup. Zoro represents the cost of ambition. Luffy represents the dream. If One Piece is truly about inherited will and the dawn of the world, then someone has to bear the darkness before that dawn. Zoro may be that person. Now imagine the final war. The world government versus the Straw Hats. Imu. The Gorosei. Admirals. What happens if Luffy reaches the edge of death again? Will Zoro repeat Thriller Bark on a global scale? Will he take a blow meant for Luffy from someone like an admiral? Or worse, from Mihawk in a final duel that decides the fate of the seas? Because here is something chilling. If Zoro becomes the world's greatest swordsman, it likely happens in the middle of chaos, not in peace. His dream may require him to defeat Mihawk while protecting Luffy's path to becoming Pirate King. Two dreams colliding. One battlefield. And if that moment mirrors Thriller Bark, Zoro may once again stand alone, covered in blood, refusing to explain himself. Except this time, the cost could be permanent. Oda once said that if Zoro were in the real world, he would be a police officer. Someone who upholds order. Someone who enforces structure. That lines up perfectly. Zoro's sacrifice was not just emotional. It was symbolic. He is the guardian of Luffy's throne before Luffy even sits on it. Thriller Bark was the proof. Not to us. To the world. To Kuma. To fate itself. And maybe to Joy Boy's legacy. Because if Luffy truly carries Joy Boy's will, then Zoro is the sword that clears the path. No applause. No credit. Just loyalty. So when he said nothing happened, it was not denial. It was acceptance. Acceptance that his pain does not matter as long as Luffy keeps moving. That is what makes Zoro one of the greatest characters in anime history. Not because he wins fights, but because he understands sacrifice without needing recognition. And here is the final thought. If the end of One Piece demands one last sacrifice, will Zoro survive it, or will history remember him as the silent shadow behind the Pirate King? Let me know what you think. Do you believe Zoro will make one final sacrifice before the series ends? Or has Oda already shown us the peak of his loyalty? If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like the video, subscribe to One Piece Uncovered, and drop your theory in the comments. Because in One Piece, nothing is accidental. And sometimes when a man says nothing happened, that is when everything changed.